What would you do if you had nothing, but you gave anyway? Not because you could afford to, but because your heart refused to let you walk away. This is the story of Samuel. A man so poor, he counted every grain of rice in that house. A man who carried his sick mother on his back to the clinic and still found a way to smile. A man who had nothing and gave it all anyway. And what life did to him in return will leave you absolutely speechless. Stay with me, because this story is one you need to hear all the way to the end. If powerful African stories move your soul, you belong right here on Tales by RM. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Now, let's begin. Lagos, a city that never sleeps. A city where some people eat off golden plates and some people pray just to eat at all. Samuel was one of those people who prayed every single morning. Before he picked up his tools, before he put on his boots, before he even stepped out of that little house, he prayed. Not for riches, just for enough. Enough to buy his mother's medication. Enough to put food on the table for his sister. Just enough. He was a construction worker. Concrete dust on his hands, sun on his back, hours that broke lesser men. But someone never complained. Because complaints don't feed a family. Work does. On this particular evening, he was walking back from the site. Tired, dusty, bones heavy with the weight of another long day, when something made him stop. Right outside one of those expensive restaurants on the mainland, the kind of place Samuel would never be allowed to even stand near the entrance, something was happening. A wealthy man, suit pressed, shoes shining, gold watch catching the last of the evening light, was standing over a young woman in a waitress's uniform. And before Samuel could even process what he was seeing, the man lifted a cup of hot water and poured it over her. She screamed, a sound that went right through Samuel's chest like a blade. People around them looked away. The restaurant manager came outside not to help her, to fire her, right there on the street in front of everyone, as if she was one who had done something wrong. Samuel stood there. He watched her try to hold herself together. He watched her pick up her bag from the ground with shaking hands. He watched her walk away, alone, burned, humiliated and jobless into the growing dark of Lagos night.
He didn't think. He just followed. When he caught up with her, she spun around, terrified. "Please, I don't want any trouble." Samuel raised both hands, slowly. "Sister, I'm not trouble. He looked at her arm, red, raw, painful. "I can't walk past a person in pain and pretend I didn't see it. That's not something I know how to do." He offered her a place to stay. Not a mansion, not a hotel. His home. Small, humble, cracked walls and a leaking roof, but warm. And that night, for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Samuel said her name was Amara. She didn't say much else that first night. She sat in a corner of Samuel's small home, arms wrapped around herself, eyes scanning every door and window, like she was waiting for something terrible to walk through. Samuel's mother, Mama Grace, didn't ask questions. She just brought out a bowl of egusi soup and set it in front of the girl like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Eat, my daughter," she said. "Whatever trouble followed you here, it can wait outside while you eat." The girl broke down right there at the table, silently, just tears, like she hadn't cried in so long she'd forgotten how. And now that someone was being kind, her body didn't know how to hold it anymore.
Days passed, then weeks, and slowly, quietly, this woman named Amara began to bloom inside that small house. She cooked, she cleaned, she nursed Mama Grace through the worst of her illness. She taught Samuel's sister how to read the English words she kept struggling with. And she became family. Without anyone planning it, without anyone asking, she just fit. But Samuel noticed things. The way she sometimes flinched at loud sounds outside. The way she never used her full name when they met anyone new. The way she would go quiet sometimes, just staring at nothing, like her mind was somewhere far, far away, in a memory she was trying to survive. One evening, he found her sitting outside on the step, looking up at the sky. He sat beside her. He didn't say anything, he just sat there. And then she spoke. "My name is not Amara." Samuel didn't move. "My real name is Sophia Williams." He told him everything. Her father, Chief Emmanuel Williams, was one of the wealthiest men in the region. A man who built his empire from nothing, brick by brick, deal by deal. A man who loved his daughter more than he loved his own life. A man who made one terrible mistake before he died. A man married again. Clara, a woman with a beautiful face and a heart made of stone. Clara smiled at the wedding. Clara laughed at the dinners. Clara held Sophia's hand at the funeral. And then the moment that funeral was over, Clara showed her real face. Crying, "She poisoned my food, Samuel." Sophia's voice was barely a whisper now. I fell sick both times. The doctors couldn't explain it. I didn't understand what was happening until I overheard her on the phone one night. She was telling someone that the girl was becoming a problem. She needed to be removed. She had run. With nothing but the clothes on her back and a borrowed phone, she's thrown in a gutter 3 towns later so they couldn't track her. She had scraped together a false identity, got the waitress job, kept her head down, survived barely until that night outside the restaurant. Until Samuel. If this story is gripping you right now, don't leave this channel. Subscribe to Tales by RM and share this video with someone who needs to hear a story like this today. We're only halfway through and the best is yet to come. Clara never stopped searching. Some people, when they lose something, grieve and move on. Clara was not that kind of person. Clara had hired men. Quietly, discreetly, men who asked no questions and took money without blinking. Men who had been looking for Sophia for months. It was a Tuesday morning when they came. Samuel had already left for the site. His sister had gone to school. Mama Grace was asleep. Sophia was alone in the yard, hanging laundry, when the gate opened, and she knew. Before she even turned around, before she saw their faces, she knew. She ran, she screamed, she fought. But there were 4 of them and she was one woman. They dragged her out of that yard, out of the only safe place she had known in months, and threw her into a black car with tinted windows. And just like that, she was gone. The mansion looked exactly the same as the day she had fled it. Same polished floors, same expensive paintings, same air of wealth that hid everything rotten underneath. Clara was waiting for her in the sitting room, legs crossed, calm, like a woman who had already decided how this story would end. "Sophia, you look dead tired." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit down, we have things to discuss." The documents were already on the table. Sad legal papers, transfer of assets, inheritance rights, everything. All carefully prepared, all just waiting for one signature. Sophia's signature. "Sign them," Clara said, "and I promise you can walk out of this house and never come back. I'll even give you money, enough to start over." She smiled, that cold, practiced smile. "Or don't sign and see what happens next." Sophia looked at the woman sitting across from her. This woman who had smiled at her father's funeral, who had held her hand, who had tried to kill her. And for one moment, just one, she felt the fear try to take over. But then she thought of Samuel.
A man with nothing who gave anyway. And something in her spine went still. No. Just that one word. No. Clara's smile vanished. They locked her in her old bedroom, the room she had grown up in. The room where her father used to sit on the edge of her bed and read her stories when she was small. Now it was a prison. Sophia sat on the edge of that bed for a long time, just breathing, just thinking. The room was the same as she'd left it, same curtains, same dresser, same mirror on the wall, tall, gilded, heavy. The mirror. Her father's voice came back to her, a memory. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Sophia, my daughter, he had said, leading her to that very mirror and pressing a small notch on its right edge. Every man needs a place where truth can hide until it is needed. This is ours. She had laughed then, thought it was a game. She wasn't laughing now. She crossed the room. Her hands were shaking. She pressed the notch, the same one exactly where she remembered it. And the mirror swung open. Inside a small compartment, dusty, untouched. And inside that compartment, a manila envelope. Inside the envelope, documents, legal documents, her father's seal on every page, and underneath everything else, a letter, handwritten in her father's handwriting, her name on the front. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely open it. My dear Sophia, it began. If you are reading this, then something has gone wrong, and I am so sorry I could not protect you myself. Everything I built, every piece of land, every investment, every account, it belongs to you. It has always belonged to you. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Do not let anyone take what is yours. I love you, my daughter. Papa. She held that letter against her chest and wept. Not the silent tears of a woman trying to hold herself together. Real tears, deep tears, the kind that come from the very bottom of a person. Her father had prepared for this. Even in death, he had protected her. She was not alone, and now it was time for the truth to come out. She had memorized one phone number before she'd fled that house. One number, the only number that mattered. Mr. Adeyemi, her father's personal lawyer. Retired now, but the kind of man who, when Chief Williams was alive, had been the keeper of every secret, every truth, every document that mattered. A man of integrity. She needed him now more than she had ever needed anyone. What happened next was quiet, deliberate, precise. Because justice, real justice, doesn't always come screaming and pleasing. Sometimes it comes in the form of a phone call made in the dark. A document pulled from behind a mirror. A lawyer who still remembered who he served. The legal proceedings were swift and devastating. Clara's version of the will was placed beside Chief Williams' original. Forensic document examiners were brought in, handwriting analysts, witnesses who had been present when the original was signed. And one by one, Clara's carefully constructed lies began to crumble. She denied everything. She shouted, she threatened, she demanded her lawyers shut it all down. But you cannot shout away a dead man's handwriting. You cannot threaten the truth out of a sealed envelope. Clara was arrested. Fraud, forgery, attempted murder. They placed handcuffs on wrists that once wore her late husband's gold bracelets. And she was led out of that mansion, through the same doors she had walked in through with a smile on the day of the wedding. Only this time, she wasn't smiling. Sophia Williams stood in the courtyard of her father's estate. The estate that was now legally, officially, undeniably hers. And she breathed. Just breathed for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. She could have stayed there, reclaimed her room, hired staff, slipped back into the life of luxury her father had built. She could have closed the gates behind her and forgotten the world outside. But she thought of a cracked wall, a leaking roof, a bowl of egusi soup placed before her by a woman who asked no questions and demanded nothing in return. She went back to the village. She walked back through that same gate that Samuel had held open for her. And when Samuel saw her, really saw her, standing there like a woman who had finally come home, he didn't know what to say. So he said nothing. He just opened his arms and she walked into them. They were married in the village square. Nothing extravagant, nothing formal, just their community around them. Mama Grace, healthier now because for the first time in years, they could actually afford her medication, sat in the front, crying happy tears and fanning herself dramatically. The whole village laughed. And Sophia didn't stop there. She built a school, a real school with proper classrooms and books and teachers who were actually paid what they deserved. She built a medical clinic so that no more mothers in that village would go without care. She created jobs, she invested, she built. Not to prove something, not to perform her wealth, but because she had once sat in the dark with nothing and someone had turned on a light for her. Now it was her turn. And Samuel, who had once counted rice grains and prayed just for enough, stood beside his wife and watched what kindness, real kindness, can build. And he understood something then that no amount of money could have taught him. When you give from what little you have, life has a way of giving back more than you can carry.
That is the story of Samuel and Sophia. A story about what happens when kindness meets desperation and refuses to look away. A story about a woman who nearly lost everything to someone else's greed. A story about how the truth, no matter how deep it's buried, always finds its way to the surface. If Samuel had kept walking that evening, if he had told himself it wasn't his business, if he had decided that a poor man has no business getting involved in a stranger's troubles, none of this would have happened. But he didn't keep walking. He stopped. And that decision, that one small, quiet, courageous decision, changed everything.
Some of you watching this are in a Samuel season right now. You're tired. You're stretched. You feel like you have nothing left to give. And I want you to hear this. Your season of return is coming. Don't stop being who you are. And some of you are in a Sophia season. Running, hiding, surviving. Wondering if anyone even sees you. Someone sees you. And the truth that belongs to you, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's waiting behind the mirror. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. It means everything. If this story touched you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Tales by RM for more powerful African stories every week. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, your story is not over yet.